The December wind cut through Silver Falls, Montana territory like a blade made of ice. It was the 15th day of December 1887, and the temperature had dropped so low that breath turned to frost before it left a man's lips. Snow piled 3 feet deep along the wooden sidewalks. Icicles hung from every roof like the teeth of some frozen beast. Elijah Thornton stood in his barn at dawn, his hands cracked and bleeding from the cold as he worked the hay fork. He was 32 years old, but his eyes belonged to a man twice that age, eyes that had seen too much, lost too much, eyes the color of storm clouds that held no light behind them anymore. His wife Margaret used to say his eyes reminded her of the sky just after a thunderstorm, full of depth and mystery and the promise of something beautiful to come. But Margaret had been dead for 4 years now. Their son William had followed her 3 days later, never having opened his eyes at all. 4 years. 4 years of waking before sunrise. 4 years of working until his muscles screamed and his mind went blank. 4 years of falling into bed too exhausted to dream. 4 years of building walls so high around his heart that even his own foreman called him a ghost walking among the living. The Thornton Ranch sprawled across 1,200 acres of prime Montana grassland. Over 200 horses grazed in pastures that seemed to stretch forever. 15 men worked under Elijah's command, though none of them could remember the last time he had shared a meal with them. None could recall the last time he had laughed or even smiled. He was wealthy beyond what most men could imagine, and he was utterly, completely alone. In the main house, a music box sat on his bedside table covered in dust so thick it obscured the delicate painted roses on its lid. It had been his last gift to Margaret, purchased 3 days before she went into labor. He had not wound it in 4 years, had not been able to bear the sound of the melody she had loved so much. Some men run from their grief. Elijah had built a fortress around his. Ada Cooper found him in the barn as the sun crept over the eastern mountains. She was 58 years old, had worked for the Thornton family for 2 decades, and was the only person alive who dared speak plainly to Elijah. She stood in the doorway with her arms crossed, gray hair escaping from her bun, flour dusting her apron. "You did not eat breakfast again." Her voice carried no question, only accusation. Elijah did not look up from his work. "Not hungry. You are never hungry. You are never tired. You are never anything at all anymore." He drove the hay fork into the pile with more force than necessary. "I have work to do, Ada." She walked toward him, her boots crunching on the frozen straw. "You have been working yourself into an early grave for 4 years, Elijah Thornton. Margaret would weep to see what you have become." The mention of his wife's name made him flinch, just slightly, just enough for Ada to notice. "Do not speak of her. Someone has to. You certainly will not." She reached out and grabbed his arm, forcing him to stop. "Look at me." He looked. "You are not living. You are merely existing. There is a difference, and the difference is killing you." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind howled outside, rattling the barn doors, then surprising them both. Elijah said quietly, "I know." Ada's eyes softened. In 20 years she had never heard him admit weakness of any kind. Then change something, anything, before there is nothing left to save. Henry Dawson arrived an hour later, riding fast despite the treacherous conditions. He was Elijah's foreman and the closest thing to a friend Elijah allowed himself to have. "Morrison from Billings is in town today," Henry said, still mounted his horse, stamping against the cold. "He has that Andalusian stallion you have been asking about. Pure bred, rarest bloodline this side of the Mississippi." Elijah considered this. An Andalusian could transform his breeding program. It was a practical decision, a business decision, the kind of decision he understood. "Where is Morrison's Silver Falls, the Grand Hotel?" "But Elijah," Henry hesitated, "the whole town is gathered in the square today. They are holding the winter orphan auction." The words hung in the frozen air between them. Elijah had heard of the auctions. Everyone had. Trains brought children from overcrowded orphanages back east, and frontier families bid on them like livestock. Some wanted workers for their farms. Some wanted servants. A few, a precious few, actually wanted children to love. That is none of my concern. Just thought you should know, in case you want to avoid the square. Elijah grabbed his heavy coat from the hook by the barn door. "I am going for the horse, nothing else." The ride to Silver Falls took nearly 2 hours through drifts that reached his horse's chest. The sky hung low and gray, promising another storm before nightfall. The kind of storm that killed unprepared travelers. The kind of storm that turned the territory into a frozen wasteland for days. By the time Elijah reached town, His beard was crusted with ice, and his fingers had gone numb inside his gloves. He made directly for the Grand Hotel, but Morrison was not there. The clerk explained apologetically that the horse had taken ill, and Morrison had delayed his trip by a week. A wasted journey. Elijah should have turned around immediately, should have ridden back to the ranch before the storm hit, should have returned to his fortress of solitude, and continued his slow march toward oblivion. But something pulled him toward the town square. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was the ghost of Margaret whispering in his ear, telling him this was the day everything would change. The square was packed despite the brutal cold. Women wrapped in furs huddled together, their breath forming clouds that mingled and rose toward the heavy sky. Men stamped their feet and blew into their hands. Children darted between legs, bored by proceedings they did not understand. At the center of everything stood a wooden platform, and on that platform stood 15 children. They ranged in age from perhaps 3 to 14. They wore clothes too thin for the weather, faces too pale from hunger, eyes too old for their years. They stood in a row like merchandise, waiting to be inspected. Elijah felt his stomach turn. A fat man in a sweat-stained suit despite the cold called out to the crowd. His name was Jebediah Marsh, and his voice had gone hoarse from hours of hawking human beings. Next up, a fine, strong boy of 11, good for farm work. Who will start the bidding at $3? A farmer in the front raised his hand. Beside Marsh stood another man, tall, thin, dressed in black with a white collar at his throat. His face was angular, almost skeletal, and his eyes were the color of slate. He held a leather-bound notebook and wrote in it constantly, his pen scratching across the pages with each transaction. Elijah recognized him. Reverend Silas Crane, the man who ran the local orphanage, a man of God, supposedly, a pillar of the community. But something about the way Crane wrote in that notebook made Elijah's skin crawl. He was not recording names. He was recording numbers, dollar amounts beside entries that could only represent human lives. The auction continued. One by one, children stepped forward. One by one, they were sold to the highest bidder. Some went to families who seemed kind. Others went to men with cold eyes and calloused hands who clearly wanted workers, not children. And then there was only one left. "All right, folks," Marsh said, his enthusiasm visibly flagging. "This here is the last one. A girl, 3 years old. Healthy enough, I suppose. Eats almost nothing. Will not be any burden at all." Elijah pushed through the crowd to see better, and his heart stopped. She stood on the platform barefoot in 3 feet of snow. Her tiny feet had turned purple from the cold, and blood seeped from cracks in her skin, where frostbite had already begun its terrible work. She wore a dress made of fabric so thin and torn it was more holes than cloth. Her hair was blonde, but so matted with dirt and ice that it looked brown in places. She was impossibly small, impossibly thin, impossibly fragile, but it was her eyes that destroyed him. Enormous brown eyes that dominated her tiny face. Eyes that held no tears, no hope, no fear. Only emptiness. The emptiness of a child who had learned that crying brought pain, that hoping brought disappointment, that fearing brought nothing at all because the worst had already happened. In her arms she clutched a teddy bear. It was the most pathetic thing Elijah had ever seen. Stuffing poked through a dozen tears. One button eye was missing. Its fur was worn down to bare fabric in patches, but she held it like it was the most precious thing in the world, because it was probably the only thing she had. "Too small for any real work," a farmer in the front said, loudly. "Be years before she is useful. I am not running a charity." "Damaged goods," someone muttered behind Elijah. "Look at her eyes. Something is broken in that one." "Come now," Marsh pleaded. "Surely someone needs a little helper around the house." "She is quiet, will not cause any trouble." But the crowd was already losing interest. People began to drift away, heading for warmth and shelter before the storm hit. Marsh wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. "All right, then. If nobody wants her, she goes back to the orphanage in Helena. They will find some use for her, I reckon." Elijah knew what that meant. Everyone knew. The Helena State Orphanage was a workhouse in everything but name. Children went in and worked 14-hour days in textile mills until their fingers bled and their lungs filled with cotton dust. The death rate was 30% in the first 5 years. This tiny girl standing barefoot in the snow with her broken teddy bear would be sent to that place, would work until she dropped, would die alone and unmourned before she reached her 10th birthday. It was not his problem. He had his own grief, his own walls, his own slow death to attend to. He should walk away. He should... Wait. The word tore from his throat before his brain could stop it. Every head in the crowd swiveled toward him. Mr. Thornton Marsh blinked in surprise. "Did you say something?" Elijah's boots hit the platform with authority. He strode across the wooden planks, his long legs eating up the distance between himself and the child. She flinched at his approach, pressing the teddy bear tighter against her chest, her entire body tensing for the blow that experience had taught her would come. But she did not run, did not cry, did not beg. She simply stood there, waiting with the terrible patience of a creature that had learned long ago that resistance was pointless. How much his voice came out rough, harsh, the voice of a man who had forgotten how to speak gently. Mr. Thornton, sir, this is highly irregular. A man in your position." I asked how much. "The standard placement fee is $5, but—" Elijah pulled out his wallet, counted out $100, 20 times the asking price. Enough money to feed a family for a year. He slapped it on the podium. That should cover the fee and then some. "Papers. Now." The crowd erupted in whispers, gossip spreading like wildfire through dry brush. "Thornton has lost his mind. What does a bachelor rancher want with a little girl? Unnatural, a man his age, taking in a child like that." Reverend Crane stepped forward, and for the first time Elijah saw something dangerous flicker in those slate-gray eyes. "Mr. Thornton," his voice was smooth as oil, "I appreciate your generosity, but surely you understand that a single man with no experience raising children cannot possibly provide the appropriate environment for a young girl. Perhaps Mrs. Cordelia Ashford would be a better choice. She has expressed considerable interest in acquiring a household helper." Acquiring. The word made Elijah's blood boil. "This child is not merchandise to be acquired, Reverend. Of course not." Crane's smile did not reach his eyes. "I merely suggest that a proper family environment—" "The child is coming with me." Elijah's voice cut like a blade. "Papers. Now. Unless you want me to contact the territorial governor about how this auction is being conducted." Something shifted in Crane's expression. Just for a moment. A flash of something cold and calculating. Then the mask returned. "As you wish, Mr. Thornton. I hope you know what you are doing." He handed over the papers. Elijah signed them without reading them, his eyes never leaving the child. When the formalities were complete, he crouched down slowly, making himself as small and non-threatening as he could. The girl watched him with those enormous brown eyes, tracking his every movement like a rabbit watching a hawk. "Hey there," he said softly. "What is your name?" No response, just that unwavering stare. "That your friend there?" He nodded toward the bear. Still nothing. But something flickered in her eyes. A tiny spark of protectiveness. "I am not going to take it from you. It is yours." She did not believe him. He could see it in the way her arms tightened around the bear, in the way her body remained rigid, ready for pain. "I am Elijah. I have a ranch about 12 miles from here. Lots of horses. Have you ever seen a horse up close?" The smallest shake of her head. "They are real gentle. Most of them. Soft noses. They like to be petted." He reached out slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, and touched the teddy bear's worn head with one finger. Softer than this little fella even. She looked at his hand on her bear, then up at his face, searching, evaluating, deciding whether this was another trick, another lie, another adult who would promise safety and deliver only pain. "I am going to pick you up now," Elijah said. "Take you somewhere safe, somewhere with food and a real bed and nobody who will hurt you." She studied him for a long moment, then so slightly he almost missed it, she nodded. Elijah scooped her up with a gentleness that surprised even himself. She weighed almost nothing, a bundle of bones and fear wrapped in rags. Her body went rigid in his arms, every muscle tensed, waiting for the blow that did not come. "It is okay," he murmured against her matted hair. "You are okay now." As he carried her through the crowd, the whispers followed like vultures. "Scandal! Poor child! What is he thinking? Reverend Crane is not going to like this." He ignored them all. But as he reached his horse, he felt the child turn her head against his chest. Felt her look back at the platform where she had stood alone and unwanted, and heard her whisper so quiet it was almost lost in the wind. "Buttons." What? His name? She breathed, her voice rusty from disuse. Buttons. Her first words to him. The name of her teddy bear. Elijah held her tighter. "That is a good name," he said. "A strong name. Now, let us get you somewhere warm." The storm hit when they were 2 miles from the ranch. Snow drove horizontal, blinding, turning the world into a swirling chaos of white. Elijah hunched over the child, shielding her with his body, while his horse struggled through drifts that reached its belly. By the time they reached the barn, both of them were coated in ice. Elijah's fingers were so numb he could barely hold the reins. But the child had not made a sound the entire journey, had not complained, had not cried. She had simply pressed herself against his chest and endured. like she had learned to endure everything else. Ada met them at the door of the main house, her face cycling through shock, confusion, and something that might have been hope. Elijah Thornton, what in heaven's name? Then she saw the child, saw the bare feet, the thin dress, the hollowed cheeks, the empty eyes. Lord have mercy. Her hand flew to her heart. What have they done to this baby? Nothing good, Elijah said. She needs food, a bath, clean clothes, and someone needs to look at those feet. Ada's face transformed from shock to fierce determination. Bring her inside. Now. They sat in the kitchen, the warmest room in the house. The fire roared in the stove. Candles flickered on every surface. And the child sat on a chair too big for her, her feet dangling, her eyes tracking every movement in the room. She ate the way feral animals eat, fast, barely chewing, shoving food into her mouth like she expected it to be snatched away at any second. Ada tried to slow her down, but it was no use. This child has been starved, Ada said quietly to Elijah, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. Systematically starved. I know. Who would do this to a baby? I intend to find out. When it came time for the bath, the child refused, flat out refused. Her body went rigid, her eyes went wild, and she pressed herself into the corner of the kitchen like a trapped animal. No, she said, the first full word she had spoken since telling him the bear's name. No bath. Please, no bath. The terror in her voice was absolute. Elijah crouched down to her level. Okay, no bath tonight. Tomorrow maybe when you are ready. All right. She stared at him, waiting for the punishment, the anger, the violence that always followed defiance. When none came, something in her face changed. Just a little, just enough. She nodded. Good. Let us find you a room then, somewhere you can sleep. The room was small but clean, a single bed with a patchwork quilt, a window that looked out over the east pasture, a lamp that Ada promised to keep burning all night. The child stood in the doorway, not entering, not believing. This is yours, Elijah said. All of it, nobody else's. She looked at him, at Ada, at the room. Her bottom lip trembled. Mine, yours. She walked in slowly, touching the quilt with one tentative finger, the dresser, the window, pressing her palm flat against the glass like she needed to confirm it was real. Buttons too. And then something in her face crumpled. Not sadness exactly, but the release of tension held too long. The first crack in walls that had been built too high for someone so small. She sat down on the bed, very carefully, like she expected it to disappear. Then she looked up at Elijah with those enormous brown eyes. What is your name again, Elijah? Nathaniel, really, but everyone calls me Elijah. Elijah. She repeated it, testing it, rolling it around in her mouth like something strange and new. You will not make me go back. The question shattered something inside him. No. He crouched down, meeting her eyes directly. I will not make you go back. This is your home now. Understand? She studied him for a long moment, searching for the lie. When she did not find one, she nodded slowly. Okay, one word, but it was enough. Ada appeared with a glass of warm milk and a nightgown 3 sizes too big. The child allowed herself to be changed, though her body remained tense throughout. And when Ada went to tuck her in, she saw the child's back for the first time. The sound Ada made was like nothing Elijah had ever heard, a gasp that was almost a scream, a cry of horror that she muffled with her hand. Elijah looked, and the world went red. Scars, dozens of scars crisscrossing the tiny back. Some faded to silver with age, some still pink and healing, some clearly infected, red and swollen, and on her left shoulder blade, burned into her skin like a brand on cattle, was the letter C. The child did not react, did not flinch, did not seem surprised that they had found her secret. She simply lay down, pulled the blanket to her chin, and closed her eyes. Like this was normal. Like every child carried maps of torture on their backs, like being branded like property was just part of life. Elijah walked out of the room, down the stairs, through the kitchen, out the back door. He stood in the yard with snow swirling around him, his hands shaking his breath, coming in ragged gasps. Someone had done this to her, systematically, repeatedly, for months, maybe years. Someone had tortured a 3-year-old child, and that someone was going to pay. He did not know how long he stood there. Long enough for the cold to seep into his bones, long enough for the shaking to stop and the rage to settle into something harder, colder, more dangerous. Ada found him eventually. She is asleep, Ada said softly. Took a while. She would not close her eyes until I promised to leave the lamp burning, the scars on her back. I know. Ada's voice was tight. I saw. I am going to find out who did that, and I am going to make them wish they had never been born. Not tonight, you are not. Tonight you are going to sit with me and figure out how to help that child, because she needs help, Elijah, more than food and shelter. She needs someone to show her that the world is not only cruelty and pain. Elijah finally turned to look at her. I do not know how to do that, Ada. I do not know the first thing about children, about healing, about any of it. Then you will learn. Ada took his arm, the way she learned that crying brought pain, the way she learned to stay silent, the way she learned to survive. You will learn, Elijah, because that little girl needs you too. She paused. And maybe you need her too. He did not answer, could not answer. But somewhere deep inside, in a place he had sealed away 4 years ago, something stirred. It felt like hope, and it terrified him more than anything had in a very long time. That night, Elijah sat in the chair outside the child's room listening to her breathe. She whimpered in her sleep, soft sounds of terror that made his chest ache. Twice, Ada went in to soothe her. Around midnight, a small voice drifted through the door. Elijah! He was inside before he had made a conscious decision to move. The child sat up in bed, buttons clutched to her chest. Moonlight streamed through the window, painting silver tracks down her cheeks. Tears. Finally. For the first time since he had found her. Hey. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, keeping distance between them. Bad dream. She nodded her breath, hitching. Want to tell me about it? The dark room. Her voice was barely audible. They put me in the dark room when I was bad. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, hidden in the shadows. There is no dark room here. No punishment rooms. No bad places. You understand? She looked up at him, those enormous eyes glistening in the moonlight. Promise, I promise. He reached out slowly, gave her time to pull away, and wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. You are safe now. Nobody is going to hurt you. Not ever again. She studied his face in the darkness, looking for truth, looking for lies. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because her body relaxed, just slightly, just enough. Rosie, she whispered. What? My name. She hugged Buttons tighter. I am Lily. Something warm bloomed in Elijah's chest, something he had not felt in 4 years. Lily. He repeated it softly. That is a beautiful name. She almost smiled. Almost. Go back to sleep, Lily. I will be right outside if you need me. You will not leave. I will not leave. She lay back down, pulling the quilt up to her chin, her bear tucked securely beside her. Her eyes stayed fixed on Elijah until sleep finally claimed her again. He sat in that chair until dawn, watching over a child who had somehow impossibly cracked through walls he had spent 4 years building. And for the first time since Margaret died, Elijah Thornton felt something other than empty. He felt afraid. Afraid of how much this tiny girl already meant to him. Afraid of what he would do if anyone tried to take her away. Afraid of the future, stretching out before them, uncertain and terrifying, and full of more hope than he had allowed himself to feel in years. But more than that, he felt determined. Lily had spent her whole short life being unwanted, being hurt, being told she was worthless. That ended now. From this moment forward, she would know every single day that someone had chosen her, that someone had looked at her, standing alone on that platform, and decided she was worth everything. Elijah did not know how to be a father, did not know the first thing about raising a little girl, did not know if he could ever fill the emptiness inside himself. But he knew how to protect what was his. And Lily was his now. God help anyone who tried to change that. The storm raged for 3 days. Snow piled against the windows until the first floor was nearly buried. Wind screamed across the valley like something alive and angry. The temperature dropped so low that the water in the horse troughs froze solid despite the barn's shelter. But inside the Thornton ranch house, something was changing. Lily spent the first 2 days in her room. She would not come out except when Ada brought food, and even then she ate in the corner with her back to the wall, watching the door like she expected monsters to burst through at any moment. She hoarded bread under her pillow. She checked the lock on her window 17 times the first night. She did not speak. On the 3rd day, Elijah found her standing at the top of the stairs, buttons clutched against her chest, staring down at the world below like it was a foreign country she was afraid to enter. Good morning, Lily. She flinched at his voice, then caught herself, then stood very still waiting. Ada is making breakfast, pancakes with maple syrup. You ever had maple syrup before? A tiny shake of her head. It is sweet, really sweet. I think you might like it. He did not approach her, did not crowd her, just stood at the bottom of the stairs with his hands visible at his sides, making himself as unthreatening as a man his size could be. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Lily took 1 step down, then another, then another. By the time she reached the bottom, she was trembling. But she had made it. "Good girl," Elijah said softly. "That was very brave." Something flickered in her eyes. Confusion, maybe? Like she had never heard those words before. The kitchen was warm and bright, filled with the smell of butter and baking. Ada had set a place for Lily at the table, complete with a cushion on the chair so she could reach her plate. Lily stood in the doorway, frozen. "Come, sit down, sweetheart," Ada said gently. "The food is getting cold." But Lily did not move. Her eyes darted around the room, cataloging exits, identifying threats, calculating escape routes, the behavior of a soldier in enemy territory, not a 3-year-old child. Elijah crouched down to her level. "You can sit wherever you feel safe. If you want to eat in the corner, that is fine. If you want to take your food back upstairs, that is fine too. Whatever makes you comfortable." Lily looked at him, then at Ada, then at the corner of the kitchen where 2 walls met, creating a small protected space. She pointed. "That corner." She nodded. Ada, without missing a beat, moved Lily's plate and cushion to the corner. She set everything up carefully, making sure Lily could see the entire room from her position. Lily sat down, picked up her fork, looked at the food like she was not sure it was real. Then she ate, not like before, frantic and desperate. Slower this time, still watchful, still ready to bolt, but slower. Progress. On the 4th day, Ada dropped a pot. The clang echoed through the kitchen like a gunshot. Lily screamed. Actually screamed, a sound of pure terror that turned Elijah's blood to ice. By the time he reached the kitchen, she had wedged herself under the table arms, wrapped around her knees, rocking back and forth, eyes squeezed shut. "No, no, 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 no," she whispered. "I will be good. I will be good. Please do not hurt me. I will be good." Elijah knelt beside the table, his heart shattering into pieces. "Lily, it was just a pot. Ada dropped a pot. Nobody is going to hurt you." But she could not hear him. She was somewhere else. Some dark room in some terrible place where loud noises meant pain was coming. It took 20 minutes for her to come back. 20 minutes of Elijah talking softly, not touching her, just letting her know he was there. 20 minutes of Ada crying silently by the stove, hand pressed over her mouth. 20 minutes of watching a 3-year-old child relive horrors that no human being should ever experience. When Lily finally opened her eyes, she looked at Elijah like she did not recognize him. Then she did. And the shame that flooded her face was worse than the fear had been. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am sorry. I will be good. I will not be loud. I will not be trouble. Please do not send me back." Elijah could not speak, could not breathe, could only reach out slowly, carefully, and offer his hand. She looked at it like it was a snake that might bite her. Then she took it. Her fingers were so small, so cold, so fragile. "You have nothing to be sorry for," Elijah said, his voice cracking. "Nothing at all." On the 5th day, Lily followed Elijah to the barn. She did not ask permission, did not announce herself, just appeared at his elbow while he was checking on the horses wrapped in a coat Ada had found that was only 4 sizes too big. Elijah pretended not to notice, pretended it was perfectly normal for a silent child to materialize out of thin air. He just kept working, talking to the horses in a low, steady voice, letting Lily observe from a safe distance. "This is Duchess," he said, stroking a chestnut mare's neck. "She is 17 years old. Been with me since she was a foal. Gentlest horse on the ranch." Lily edged closer. "Just a little. And this big fellow is Thunder. He likes to act tough, but really he is scared of his own shadow. Watch." Elijah made a sudden movement with his hand. Thunder startled backward, snorting dramatically. "See? All bluster." Something happened on Lily's face. A tiny twitch at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile, but close. Then they reached Willow's stall. The mare was lying in the straw, her sides heaving, her eyes rolling with pain. Elijah had been checking on her every few hours. She was due any day now. "What is wrong with her?" Lily's voice was so quiet Elijah almost missed it. "She is having a baby," he explained. "Sometimes it is hard work. She has been at it for a while now." "Will she die?" The question was asked without emotion, like death was something Lily understood all too well. "I hope not." Elijah opened the stall door and stepped inside. He knelt beside Willow, running his hands along her belly. "I am going to stay with her tonight. Make sure she is okay." Lily stood at the stall door watching. "Can I stay too?" Elijah looked at her. At this tiny, broken child who had every reason to hide in her room and never come out, who had every reason to trust nothing and no one, who was standing there asking to witness the messy, painful, beautiful miracle of birth. "Yes, you can stay." They sat together in the straw as the hours passed. Elijah explained what was happening in simple terms. Lily listened without speaking, her eyes never leaving Willow. Around midnight the foal came. It was a difficult birth. Willow screamed. Blood soaked the straw. For one terrible moment Elijah thought they might lose them both. Then the foal slipped free, a filly pure white, except for a single gray spot on her forehead. She lay in the straw wet and trembling, blinking at the world she had just entered. Lily made a sound. Elijah turned to look at her. Tears were streaming down her face, but she was smiling. Actually smiling for the first time since he had found her. "She is beautiful," Lily whispered. "Yes," Elijah said, his own eyes stinging. "She is." Willow began to clean her baby, long tongue stroking the wet fur. The foal struggled to stand, legs wobbling, collapsing, trying again. "She is brave," Lily said. "She keeps trying even when she falls. That is how you learn to walk. You fall down and you get back up." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I fell a lot, at the orphanage. They did not like it when I fell." Elijah's jaw tightened. "What happened when you fell?" "The dark room." She said it matter-of-factly, like discussing the weather. 3 days in the dark room for every fall, because falling was weakness, and weakness was not allowed. Elijah had to close his eyes, had to breathe through the rage that threatened to consume him. That was wrong of them, he said, when he could trust his voice. Falling is not weakness. Falling is learning. Everyone falls, even you, even me. Lily considered this. "What do you do when you fall?" "I get back up," Elijah said, "and I keep trying." The foal finally made it to her feet, stood swaying for a moment, then took a step, then another. Lily watched with wonder. "What is her name?" "She does not have one yet." Elijah looked at Lily. "Maybe you could help me think of one." Lily's eyes went wide. "Me?" "You. She is your horse too now. Everything on this ranch belongs to all of us." Something happened in Lily's face. A crack in the armor. A glimpse of the child beneath the survivor. "Snowdrop," she said softly, "because she was born in the snow, and she is white, like a snowdrop flower." Elijah smiled. His first real smile in years. "Snowdrop. That is perfect." On the 6th day, Charlie Cooper arrived. He was Ada's grandson, 10 years old, visiting with his parents for the week. He burst through the front door like a small tornado, all energy and noise and enthusiasm. Lily vanished. One moment she was in the kitchen, helping Ada roll pie dough. The next, she was simply gone like smoke in the wind. Elijah found her under her bed, pressed against the wall, barely breathing. "Lily, it is okay. That is just Charlie. He is loud, but he is harmless. He yelled. He is excited. Boys his age are like that. He is big, he is 10, and he would never hurt you. I promise." Lily did not move. Elijah lay down on his stomach so he could see her properly, so she could see him. "I know you are scared. I know loud noises are hard. I know big people are hard, but Charlie is a good person. And you do not have to talk to him if you do not want to. You do not have to do anything you do not want to. You can stay under this bed all day if that is what feels safe." Lily looked at him. "You would let me do that. I would let you do whatever you need to do to feel okay." Silence stretched between them. Then Lily said, "Buttons wants to meet the horses. Can you take him?" Elijah did not miss the deflection, the way she was using the bear to express her own desires while keeping herself safe. "I think Buttons would love to meet the horses, and maybe if he is feeling brave, he could meet Charlie too. I hear Charlie is very good with animals." An hour later, Lily crept down the stairs. Charlie had been thoroughly briefed by Ada. He sat on the floor of the living room building, something with wooden blocks, talking to himself in a cheerful monologue that required no response. Lily stood in the doorway watching. Charlie glanced up, smiled, then went back to his blocks. "I am building a barn," he announced to no one in particular, "for horses. I love horses. My grandmother says you have a new horse, a baby one. I would love to see her sometime. Baby horses are the best." Lily did not respond, but she did not run either. She stood there for 15 minutes, then 30, then an hour, and finally, slowly, she walked across the room and sat down 3 feet from Charlie. He handed her a block without looking at her, without making a big deal of it, without acknowledging that anything unusual had happened. Lily took the block. She placed it on top of his structure. Charlie grinned. "That is perfect. You are good at this." By the end of the day, they were building together, still not touching, still not talking, but together. When Charlie's parents came to collect him for dinner, Lily did something extraordinary. She waved. Just a small wave, just a flutter of her fingers. But it was voluntary communication with another human being that was not Elijah or Ada. "She trusts him," Ada said quietly, standing beside Elijah as they watched the children. "She is starting to trust. It has only been a week. Some souls recognize each other. Ada's voice was thick with emotion. Some broken things know how to mend each other. On the seventh day, Lily spoke. Not the fragmented words she had offered before, not the terrified whispers of nightmares, a real sentence offered freely without fear. They were sitting in the kitchen. Elijah was drinking coffee. Lily was eating oatmeal with maple syrup, which had become her favorite food in the world. Ada was washing dishes, humming an old hymn, and Lily said, "I like it here. It is warm." Elijah set down his coffee cup. Ada stopped humming. The words hung in the air like something precious and fragile. "I am glad," Elijah said carefully. "We like having you here." Lily looked at him, looked at Ada, looked around the kitchen with its warm stove and bright windows and lack of dark corners. At the orphanage, she said there was never enough food. We were always cold. We were always scared. She paused. "I am not scared here." Elijah could not speak. His throat had closed completely. Ada wiped her eyes with her apron. "You never have to be scared here, sweetheart," Ada managed. "Never," Lily nodded, went back to her oatmeal. And just like that, the first wall fell. But outside the ranch, the world was not standing still. On the morning of the 8th day after the storm had finally passed, and the roads had become passable again, a rider appeared at the gate. Henry recognized him from a distance. "Trouble, boss," he said, finding Elijah in the barn. "That is one of Reverend Crane's men." Elijah's blood went cold. He walked out to meet the rider, positioning himself between the approaching stranger and the house where Lily was playing with wooden blocks in front of the fire. The man handed over an envelope without speaking, then turned his horse and rode away. Elijah opened it, read it again. His hands began to shake. "What is it?" Henry asked. "A summons?" Elijah's voice sounded strange even to his own ears. "From Reverend Crane. He is challenging the adoption. On what grounds the papers were not properly authorized. The auction was conducted without his explicit approval as the regional supervisor of orphan placements. He is demanding Lily be returned to the orphanage pending a formal hearing. That is insane. You paid. You signed papers. Apparently those papers are worthless." Elijah crumpled the summons in his fist. "Crane is claiming sole authority over orphan placements in the territory, and he has powerful friends. When is the hearing? 3 weeks. January 23rd, at the county courthouse." Henry was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" Elijah looked toward the house. Through the window, he could see Lily. She was holding buttons, showing him the wooden blocks, talking to him in a soft voice that Elijah could not hear but could imagine. She was finally starting to feel safe, finally starting to trust, finally starting to believe that the world might not be entirely cruel. And Crane wanted to drag her back to hell. "Whatever I have," to Elijah said, "whatever it takes, I will burn this territory to the ground before I let that man touch her again." He meant every word. And somewhere in the dark corners of Silver Falls, Reverend Silas Crane was counting his money and making plans of his own. The war for Lily's soul had just begun. The summons changed everything. Elijah rode into Silver Falls the next morning, leaving Lily in Ada's care with strict instructions to let no one through the gate. Henry stayed behind with 2 armed ranch hands, their rifles loaded and ready. The town looked different now. The same wooden buildings, the same frozen streets, the same people going about their daily business. But Elijah saw it with new eyes. Enemy territory. He did not know who belonged to Crane, did not know which friendly faces hid treacherous hearts, did not know how deep the Reverend's roots had grown into this community, but he was about to find out. Thomas Reed's office was located above the general store, a cramped space filled with law books and papers stacked in precarious towers. Reed himself was younger than Elijah had expected, 25 at most, with copper-colored hair, wire-rimmed spectacles, and the intense eyes of a true believer. "Mr. Thornton," Reed shook his hand firmly, "I have been expecting you. You know why I am here. The whole town knows." Reed gestured to a chair buried under documents. "Crane has been telling anyone who will listen that you kidnapped a child from his orphanage, that you corrupted the auction process, that you are mentally unstable due to the death of your wife." Elijah sat down heavily. "None of that is true. I know." Reed cleared a space on his desk, revealing a thick folder. "I have been investigating Crane for 8 months. What I have found would make your blood run cold. Tell me." Reed opened the folder. "I had a sister," he said quietly. "Elizabeth. She was 6 years old when our parents died. I was 8. A wealthy family in Boston adopted me. Elizabeth was sent west. What happened to her?" Reed's jaw tightened. "I spent years searching. Finally found her records last spring. She was placed with a textile mill in Helena at age 7, listed as an apprentice. In reality, she was a slave. Worked 14-hour days operating machinery designed for adult hands. Reed paused. She died when she was 11. Caught her arm in a loom. They did not bother calling a doctor. I am sorry. Do not be sorry. Be angry. Reed's eyes burned, because Elizabeth was not alone. There are dozens of children like her, maybe hundreds, and Crane is at the center of it all. He spread papers across the desk. Records, letters, financial documents that should never have seen the light of day. The orphanage system in this territory is rotten to its core, Reed continued. Those girls have a tendency to disappear when they turn 13 or 14. Elijah thought of Lily, 3 years old, blonde hair, big brown eyes, prime merchandise in the most horrific market imaginable, the brand, he said. On Lily's shoulder, the letter C. Reed nodded grimly. His signature. Every child he sells gets marked, so buyers can reclaim their property if the merchandise tries to escape. Property. The word tasted like poison. We need that ledger, Elijah said. The black notebook he carries everywhere. I know. Reed closed the folder. But it never leaves his person. He sleeps with it under his pillow according to my sources. We cannot legally obtain it. Then we obtain it illegally. Reed looked at him for a long moment. You would risk everything. Your reputation. Your freedom. Perhaps your life. Elijah thought of Lily, of her tiny fingers wrapped around his, of her voice whispering, I am not scared here. I would burn this whole territory to ashes if it meant keeping her safe. And if I can save other children in the process, then the fire will be worth it. Reed smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a man who had finally found an ally in a war he had been fighting alone. Then let us begin. 3 days later, Dr. Hannah Mercer came to the ranch. She was a striking woman in her mid-30s with dark hair pinned severely back and eyes that missed nothing. She had trained in Philadelphia, one of only a handful of female physicians in the country, and she had come west after her husband died of consumption. Most men in Silver Falls refused to let her treat them. A woman doctor was an abomination, they said, against nature, against God's plan. But the women trusted her, and the children. I have examined children from Crane's orphanage before she told Elijah in his study, 3 of them over the past 2 years. All showed signs of systematic abuse, beatings, malnutrition. One showed evidence of other trauma. Did you report it to Sheriff Morrison? He dismissed my concerns, said children lie, said I was misinterpreting innocent accidents. Morrison is in Crane's pocket. I suspected as much. Hannah's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. That is why I am here. I want to help. I want to document everything, create a medical record so detailed that not even the most corrupt judge could ignore it. Lily will not allow strangers to touch her. I know. That is why I brought something. She reached into her bag and produced a small wooden box. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a stethoscope, unlike any Elijah had seen. The metal was polished to a mirror shine, and the earpieces were carved from ivory. This belonged to my mentor in Philadelphia, Hannah said. Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell, the first woman to receive a medical degree in America. She gave it to me when I graduated. Said it had healing power beyond the physical. You want to use it on Lily? I want to show it to her first. Let her see that medicine can be gentle, that doctors can be kind. It took 2 hours. Lily refused at first, hid behind Elijah's legs, pressed herself into corners, shook her head with the desperate determination of a cornered animal. But Hannah was patient. She sat on the floor of Lily's room, the stethoscope in her lap, and simply waited. She told stories about Dr. Blackwell, about how people had thrown rotten eggs at her when she tried to attend medical school, about how she had refused to give up, about how she had healed thousands of people who called her names and said she did not belong. Lily listened. Slowly the terror receded. Curiosity took its place. Can I touch it? Of course. Lily reached out, ran her fingers over the polished metal, pressed the earpiece to her own chest. I can hear my heart, she whispered. It sounds like horses running. Hannah smiled. That is exactly what a healthy heart should sound like. The examination was gentle but thorough. Hannah moved slowly, explaining everything she was doing before she did it, asking permission at every step, stopping whenever Lily showed signs of distress. Elijah stayed in the room the entire time, holding Lily's hand, letting her squeeze his fingers whenever the fear threatened to overwhelm her. When it was over, Hannah's face was pale. 22 distinct scars from whipping or striking, she said, her voice carefully controlled. 3 ribs that were broken at some point and healed without medical treatment. Severe historical malnutrition. And the brand on her shoulder, it was done with a heated implement, deliberately, by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Can you document all of this? I already have. Hannah produced a sheaf of papers covered in detailed notes and diagrams. "This will stand up in any court. It proves systematic abuse over an extended period. Crane will say it happened before she came to his orphanage. He can try. But I have dated the injuries based on healing patterns. The most recent wounds occurred within the past 3 months. She was in his care during that entire time." After Hannah left, Lily found Elijah on the front porch staring at the mountains. "Papa." The word still caught him off guard every time, still made his heart clench with an emotion he could not name. "Yes, little one. Dr. Mercer did not hurt me. I know. She said my heart sounds like horses. It does. A whole herd of them." Lily was quiet for a moment, then she said, "At the orphanage there was a doctor. He looked at my back once. He said I was damaged goods. He said no one would ever want something so broken." Elijah knelt down, took her small face in his hands. "That doctor was wrong. You are not damaged. You are not broken. You are perfect exactly as you are. But the marks are proof that you survived. They are proof that you are stronger than anyone who ever tried to hurt you. And someday, when you are older, they will remind you that you made it through the darkness into the light." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I love you, Papa." 3 words, simple words. Words children said to parents every day across the world. But Lily had never said them to anyone before, had never trusted anyone enough, had never felt safe enough. "I love you too," Elijah said, his voice breaking, "more than anything in this world." On January 12th, Emma Dawson appeared at the ranch gate. She was 18 years old, thin as a winter branch, wearing clothes that had seen better decades. Her eyes held the same hollow look that Elijah recognized from Lily's first days. The look of someone who had survived things that no one should have to survive. "You are Elijah Thornton," she said, "the man who is fighting Crane." "Who are you?" "My name is Emma. I spent 6 years in his orphanage, and I want to help you destroy him." They sat in the kitchen while she told her story. Ada pressed hot tea into her trembling hands. Henry stood guard by the door hand, resting on his pistol. Emma spoke for 2 hours. She spoke of children beaten for crimes as small as looking a caretaker in the eye, of days without food as punishment for breaking impossible rules, of the dark cellar where difficult children were locked until they learned obedience or died trying. She spoke of her friend Mary. She was 7 years old. Emma said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. Beautiful, golden hair, blue eyes. One day Crane called her into his office. She never came back. Where did she go? Emma's hands tightened around her teacup. "I saw her last year, in Helena, working in a house on Mercury Street. Mercury Street was the red light district. Everyone knew what happened on Mercury Street." "She was 13, Emma continued. "Wearing paint on her face and nothing in her eyes. She looked right through me, like I was a stranger, like she had forgotten who she used to be." Elijah's hands were shaking. "Would you testify to this in court? That is why I am here." Emma pulled up her sleeve, revealing a scar that made Elijah's blood freeze. The letter C, burned into her forearm, identical to Lily's brand. "He marked us," she said, "every child he sold, so we could never escape what he made us, so we would always belong to whoever paid for us." She looked up at Elijah with eyes that had seen hell. "But I got out. I survived. And now I am going to make sure he never hurts another child again." 3 days before the hearing, Elijah took Lily into town. She needed new clothes, shoes that actually fit, perhaps a toy or two that was not falling apart. Simple errands, normal errands. He should have known better. They had just left the general store when a carriage pulled up beside them, black lacquer with gold trim, horses so perfectly matched they might have been twins. The door opened and Cordelia Ashford stepped out. She was 60 years old, but fighting it with powder and paint and expensive clothes. Her hair was dyed brown, but gray showed at the roots. Her eyes were pale blue and empty in a way that made Elijah think of winter ponds. Frozen, lifeless. "Mr. Thornton," her voice was honey poured over broken glass. "And this must be the darling little creature I have heard so much about." Lily pressed against Elijah's leg, her entire body going rigid. "Mrs. Ashford," Elijah said coldly, "we were just leaving. Oh, do not rush off on my account." Cordelia bent down to look at Lily, and something in her gaze made Elijah's skin crawl. Such a pretty little thing. Those eyes, that hair. She would clean up beautifully with the right guidance. Lily was trembling now. Her fingers dug into Elijah's coat like claws. "We have nothing to discuss," Elijah said. "Excuse us." But Cordelia stepped into his path. "I simply wanted to offer my assistance," she said, her smile widening. A man in your position, unmarried, inexperienced, living alone with a young girl. People talk, Mr. Thornton. They wonder. They ask questions about your motivations. The accusation was clear, unspoken, but clear. Elijah felt rage rising in his chest like a wildfire. My motivations are none of your concern. Oh, but they are. Cordelia tilted her head. You see, I have considerable influence in this community, on the school board, at the church, with Judge Harrison himself. If I were to express concerns about a child's welfare, she let the threat hang in the air. But there is another option, she continued. I am always looking for household helpers, young girls who need proper training, proper discipline. I could take this burden off your hands, make the whole unpleasant situation simply disappear. She is not a burden. Elijah's voice was barely controlled. She is my daughter. Cordelia laughed, a cold, brittle sound. We shall see what the court has to say about that. She climbed back into her carriage. I will see you at the hearing, Mr. Thornton. I expect it will be quite illuminating. The carriage rolled away. Lily did not speak the entire ride home, did not move, barely seemed to breathe. When they finally reached the ranch, she said 5 words that shattered what remained of Elijah's heart. The white-haired lady, she whispered. She came to the orphanage. She took Annie. Annie never came back. Elijah pulled her into his arms. She will not take you. I will not let her. I will not let anyone take you ever. Lily buried her face in his chest. Promise. He thought of Cordelia's cold eyes, of Crane's black ledger, of the entire corrupt system arrayed against them. I promise, he said. And he meant it, even if keeping that promise cost him everything he had. That night, Elijah sat in his study with Thomas Reed, Hannah Mercer, and Emma Dawson. We have testimony, Reed said. We have medical evidence. We have financial records showing payments from Ashford to Crane that do not match any legitimate adoption fees. But we do not have the ledger. Number Reed shook his head. And without it, Crane can deny everything. Say Emma is lying. Say the medical evidence proves nothing about his orphanage specifically. There has to be a way, Hannah said. There might be. They all turned to look at Emma. I know someone, she said quietly. Someone who still works at the orphanage. A woman named Martha Collins. She was the only adult who ever showed us kindness. She kept her own records, secretly, for years. Why? Because she believed that someday someone would care enough to stop what was happening. She copied entries from Crane's ledger whenever she could. Names, dates, prices paid. Can you contact her? Emma nodded. Then do it, Elijah said. Whatever it takes, whatever it costs, we need those records. The hearing was in 3 days. 3 days to dismantle an empire built on the bones of children. 3 days to save Lily. 3 days to find hope in the darkness. Elijah looked around at the people gathered in his study. A young lawyer driven by grief, a woman doctor fighting for recognition, a survivor determined to see justice done. 4 years ago, he had been alone, had wanted to be alone, had built walls so high he thought nothing could ever penetrate them. Now he had a daughter who called him Papa, allies who believed in the same cause, a purpose beyond mere survival, and enemies who would stop at nothing to destroy everything he had built. The war was coming, and Elijah Thornton was finally ready to fight. The night before the hearing, Silver Falls held its breath. Snow fell steadily, blanketing the town in white silence. Lanterns flickered in windows like frightened eyes. The temperature dropped to 20 below, cold enough to kill a man caught outside without shelter. In the Thornton ranch house, no one slept. Elijah sat in his study, surrounded by papers and evidence and desperate hope. Thomas Reed had gone over the case 100 times. They had testimony, they had medical records, they had financial documents that painted a damning picture, but they still did not have the ledger. Martha Collins had not responded to Emma's message. 3 days of waiting, and nothing. No word, no sign, no hope of the evidence that could end Crane's empire once and for all. The fire crackled in the hearth. Outside, the wind howled like something hungry and lost. Papa Elijah looked up. Lily stood in the doorway, buttons clutched against her chest. She wore the white nightgown Ada had made for her, her bare feet pale against the dark wooden floor. Her hair, finely clean and brushed, fell in golden waves around her shoulders. She looked like an angel. She looked terrified. You should be sleeping, little one. I cannot sleep. Lily walked toward him slowly, her eyes fixed on his face. My stomach feels like butterflies. Bad butterflies. Elijah set aside his papers and lifted her onto his lap. She was still so light, still so fragile, but she no longer went rigid when he touched her, no longer flinched at sudden movements, no longer expected pain. Mine too, he admitted. Are you scared? The question deserved an honest answer. Yes, I am scared. Lily absorbed this information. Her small fingers traced patterns on his shirt. I thought grown-ups were not supposed to be scared. Everyone gets scared sometimes, even grown-ups, especially when something important is happening. Is tomorrow important? Tomorrow is the most important day of my life, Elijah said, because tomorrow I'm going to fight to keep you. Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "What if you lose?" The question hit him like a physical blow. He had asked himself the same thing 1,000 times over the past 3 weeks, had lain awake imagining the worst, had seen Lily being dragged away in his nightmares, her screams echoing through empty rooms. I will not lose. But what if you do? Elijah took her face in his hands, made her look at him. Listen to me, Lily. No matter what happens tomorrow, I will never stop fighting for you. If they take you, I will come get you. If they lock you away, I will break down the doors. If they send you to the ends of the earth, I will follow. His voice cracked. You are my daughter. Not because a piece of paper says so, because my heart says so, and nothing in this world will ever change that. Lily's eyes filled with tears. The bad man said I was worthless. He said no one would ever want me. The bad man was a liar. Elijah wiped her tears with his thumb. You are worth more than all the gold in Montana, more than this ranch, more than anything I have ever owned or ever will own. Even Snowdrop. A surprised laugh escaped him. Even Snowdrop. Lily smiled, a real smile, the kind that lit up her whole face and made Elijah believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would be all right. Papa. Yes, sweetheart, I think Mama Margaret sent me to you. The words stopped his heart. What makes you say that Ada told me about her, about how she wanted a baby so much, about how she went to heaven before she could be a mama? Lily pressed her small hand against his chest, right over his heart. I think she is up in heaven, and she saw that you were sad, and she saw that I was sad, so she made us find each other. Elijah could not speak, could not breathe, could only hold this tiny child who somehow understood things that he had never been able to put into words. Do you think that is true? He thought of Margaret. Of the music box gathering dust on his bedside table, of 4 years of grief and emptiness, and walls built so high he thought nothing would ever get through. And then Lily, standing on that platform, barefoot in the snow, waiting for someone to see her. Yes, he said finally, his voice rough with emotion. I think it is true. Lily nodded satisfied. Then we will not lose tomorrow, because Mama Margaret is watching, and she would not let anyone take me away from you. She fell asleep in his arms, her breath warm against his neck, buttons squished between them. Elijah held her until dawn, listening to the storm rage outside, making silent promises to a wife he had lost and a daughter he had found. Whatever it takes, he whispered into the darkness, whatever it costs. The morning of January 23rd dawned cold and clear. The storm had passed in the night, leaving behind a world transformed. Snow sparkled like diamonds under a pale winter sun. Icicles hung from every roof, glittering like crystal chandeliers. The air was so cold it hurt to breathe. Elijah dressed Lily in her finest clothes, the red wool dress Ada had made. New shoes that actually fit, a white ribbon in her hair. Around her neck she wore the silver crescent moon necklace that had belonged to Margaret. He had given it to her on Christmas morning, had told her it was a gift from both her mothers, the one in heaven and the family here on earth. She had not taken it off since. You look beautiful, Ada said, her eyes glistening as she adjusted Lily's ribbon. Like a princess, Charlie added from the doorway. Lily almost smiled. Then her eyes found Elijah, and the fear returned. It is time, he said gently. Are you ready? She took a deep breath, squared her small shoulders, lifted her chin. I am ready. They rode to town in the wagon, wrapped in blankets and furs against the brutal cold. Henry drove his rifle beside him on the seat. 2 other ranch hands followed on horseback, armed and watchful. Thomas Reed met them at the courthouse steps. We have a problem, he said quietly, pulling Elijah aside. Crane brought half the town as witnesses, the church congregation, the school board, the women's auxiliary. They are all going to testify that he is a pillar of the community. What about our witnesses? Emma is here. Dr. Mercer, too. But Elijah, Reed's face was grim. Sheriff Morrison has been watching the roads. My sources say he turned back 3 people who were trying to reach town last night. Former orphans who wanted to testify. He is blocking witnesses. He is doing whatever Crane tells him to do. Elijah felt rage rising in his chest. What about Martha Collins? No word. Reed shook his head. I am sorry, Elijah. We will have to do this without the ledger. The courtroom was packed. Every seat was filled. People stood along the walls, crowded into corners, pressed against the windows. The air was thick with anticipation and the smell of wet wool and unwashed bodies. Elijah led Lily down the center aisle, his hand firmly wrapped around hers. He felt the stares, heard the whispers, saw the faces of friends and enemies, and those who had not yet decided which side they were on. At the front of the room, Crane sat with his lawyer. Cornelius Patterson was a large man in an expensive suit, his face soft and doughy, his eyes sharp as broken glass. He had built his reputation on winning unwinnable cases through any means necessary. Beside them sat Cordelia Ashford. She wore black silk and pearls, her face arranged in an expression of pious concern. When her eyes found Lily, something hungry flickered in their depths. Lily pressed closer to Elijah. "It is okay," he murmured. "I am right here." Judge Abraham Stone entered through a side door, his black robes flowing behind him. He was 60 years old, with a white beard and sharp eyes that had seen every kind of human weakness and cruelty. He was also, according to Reed, the only honest man in the county government. Their one chance. This court is now in session. Stone's voice filled the room like thunder. "We are here to determine the custody of the minor child known as Lily, currently in the care of Mr. Elijah Thornton. Reverend Crane, you have filed a petition challenging this arrangement. State your case." Patterson rose, adjusting his lapels. "Your Honor, this case is straightforward. Mr. Thornton removed a child from Reverend Crane's care without proper legal authorization. The auction at which he claims to have obtained custody was conducted by Mr. Jebediah Marsh, who had no authority to execute placement documents. Only Reverend Crane, as the regional supervisor of orphan services, can legally authorize such transfers." He paused for effect. "Furthermore, we have serious concerns about Mr. Thornton's fitness as a guardian. He is unmarried. He has no experience with children. He has lived as a virtual recluse since the tragic death of his wife and son 4 years ago. Several respected members of this community have questioned his mental stability." Objection. Reed stood. "There is no medical evidence of any mental instability." Sustained. Stone nodded. "Mr. Patterson, confine your arguments to provable facts." Patterson smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Very well, Your Honor. The facts are simple. This child belongs under the care of a proper institution, not a lonely bachelor rancher who purchased her on a whim." Reed conducted his cross-examination with surgical precision. He established that Marsh had conducted similar auctions for 15 years without Crane ever raising objections. He presented financial records showing payments to Crane that did not match any legitimate fees. He questioned why Crane had waited until 3 weeks after the auction to challenge the custody. Crane answered everything with smooth confidence. "I was unaware of the irregularities until recently. The payments were standard administrative processing fees. I have always trusted Mr. Marsh's judgment, but in this case I cannot ignore the violation of proper procedure." Then Reed called Dr. Hannah Mercer. She walked to the witness stand with her head high, ignoring the hostile mutters from Crane's supporters. She presented her medical findings in clear, precise language. 22 scars, 3 healed fractures, evidence of systematic abuse over an extended period. And the brand, she concluded. The letter C burned into the child's shoulder blade with a heated implement. This was not an accident. This was deliberate mutilation. The courtroom erupted. Order Stone banged his gavel. Order Patterson stood, his face red. "Your Honor, this witness is clearly biased. She is a woman pretending to be a doctor, presenting wild accusations based on her own prejudiced interpretation." "I am a licensed physician," Hannah said coldly. "I trained at the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania and interned at the New York Infirmary. My qualifications are not in question. Your objectivity is," Patterson sneered. "You have aligned yourself with Mr. Thornton's camp. Your testimony is worthless." "That is for me to decide," Stone said sharply. "Continue, Dr. Mercer." Hannah continued. She explained how she had dated the injuries based on healing patterns, how the most recent wounds had occurred within the 3 months Lily was in Crane's care, how the evidence was consistent with systematic torture of a child. When she finished, the courtroom was silent. Then Patterson called his witnesses. One by one, they testified to Crane's character: the church deacon who spoke of his dedication to God's work, the schoolteacher who praised his generosity to the poor, the women's auxiliary president who described his kindness to orphaned children. It was a parade of lies, and there was nothing Elijah could do but watch. Reed called Emma Dawson. She walked to the stand with her chin up, her eyes fixed straight ahead. She told her story without flinching. The beatings, the starvation, the children sold like cattle. She showed the courtroom her brand. "Every child he sells gets marked," she said, "so we can never escape. so we will always belong to whoever paid for us." Patterson's cross-examination was brutal. "You have a personal vendetta against Reverend Crane, do you not?" "I have a personal interest in seeing justice done." "Justice or revenge? You were a difficult child. You were disciplined. Now you seek to destroy a man of God with lies. They are not lies." "No," Patterson smiled. "Do you have proof?" "Documents, witnesses beyond your own questionable memory. I have this scar. I have my testimony. I have the truth." "The truth." Patterson turned to the gallery. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have heard a great deal about truth today, but what we have not heard is any concrete evidence that Reverend Crane has done anything wrong. We have accusations from a disgraced woman doctor and a vengeful former orphan. Nothing more. He was winning." Elijah could feel it, the tide turning, the doubt creeping into eyes that had been sympathetic moments before. 3 weeks of preparation, mountains of evidence, and it was all going to collapse because they could not prove what they knew to be true. Then the door at the back of the courtroom burst open. A woman stood in the entrance, middle-aged, gray-haired, wearing a simple wool dress covered in road dust and melting snow. She was breathing hard like she had run the last mile. Behind her were 5 children. They ranged in age from 6 to 12, all of them thin, all of them hollow-eyed, all of them bearing the unmistakable look of survivors. "I am Martha Collins," the woman announced, her voice ringing through the stunned courtroom. "I was a nurse at the Helena State Orphanage for 15 years, and I have the Black Ledger. Pandemonium." Stone hammered his gavel until his arm must have ached. Patterson shouted objections. Crane's face went white as death. And Martha Collins walked down the center aisle, holding up a worn leather notebook for all to see. "This is a copy of Reverend Crane's personal records," she said. "Names, dates, amounts paid. Every child he has ever sold. Every buyer who paid for human flesh." She placed the ledger on Stone's bench. "I also brought witnesses. These children were scheduled to be sold next month. I removed them from the Helena facility 3 days ago. Every one of them can testify to what they have seen and experienced." She turned to face Crane. "It is over, Silas. Your empire of cruelty ends today." Crane stood. His mask of pious concern had cracked, revealing something ugly beneath. "This is preposterous. These are forgeries. This woman is clearly disturbed." "Am I?" Martha walked toward him. "Then explain the brand on that little girl's shoulder. Explain how she got a mark that matches the signature you put on every piece of merchandise you sell. You branded children like cattle. You sold them to factories and mines and brothels. You got rich on their suffering and hid behind the cloth of a holy man." Stone's voice cut through the chaos. "Sheriff Morrison, take Reverend Crane into custody pending further investigation." But Morrison did not move. "Sheriff?" Stone's voice turned to ice. "I gave you an order." Morrison looked at Crane, looked at the crowd, looked at the 5 children standing in the aisle, their eyes accusing him of every crime he had helped conceal. Then he walked toward Crane with his handcuffs. "You cannot do this," Crane sputtered. "I am a man of God. I have friends in the territorial government. I will have all of you destroyed." The handcuffs clicked shut. "You have the right to remain silent," Morrison said flatly. "I suggest you use it." Through all of this, Lily had sat frozen in her seat, her small hand gripping Elijah's so tightly he could feel her nails digging into his palm. But when the deputies led Crane toward the door, she stood up. "Wait." Her voice was small, barely above a whisper, but somehow everyone heard. The room fell silent. "I want to say something." Lily walked toward the front of the courtroom, so small among all these adults, so fragile. But her eyes were blazing with something that looked like courage. "That man hurt me," she said, pointing at Crane. "He hit me with his belt. He locked me in a room with no light. He burned me with a hot piece of metal." Her voice grew stronger. "He told me I was worthless. He told me no one would ever want me. He told me I deserved everything bad that happened to me." She turned to face the crowd. But he was wrong. She found Elijah's eyes. "My papa wanted me. He chose me when everyone else said I was garbage. He promised to keep me safe, and he kept his promise." She walked back to Elijah and took his hand. "That is what a real father does. He does not hurt you. He does not sell you. He loves you and fights for you and never gives up." She looked up at Stone. "Please let me stay with my papa. He is the only person who ever made me feel like I was worth something." The courtroom was utterly silent. Stone cleared his throat, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "In 25 years on this bench," he said, his voice rough, "I have rarely witnessed such courage from someone so young." He picked up his gavel. "It is the ruling of this court that the minor child Lily shall remain in the permanent custody of Mr. Elijah Thornton, effective immediately." The gavel fell. Furthermore, I am ordering a full investigation into the operations of both the Silver Falls and Helena orphanages, as well as the activities of all parties involved in this trafficking network. He looked at Crane at Cordelia Ashford, trying to slip out a side door at the web of corruption that had been exposed. Justice will be served. Lily threw herself into Elijah's arms. He caught her, lifted her, held her against his chest as the courtroom exploded in chaos around them. People shouting, deputies moving, Crane being dragged away, screaming threats and obscenities. But none of it mattered. "We won, Papa," Lily whispered against his neck. "We won, sweetheart. Forever, forever." She pulled back to look at his face, her brown eyes shining with tears and joy, and something that looked like wonder. "I told you," she said. "I told you Mama Margaret would not let anyone take me away." Elijah laughed through his own tears. "Yes, you did." Behind them, through the tall windows of the courtroom, the winter sun broke through the clouds and flooded the room with light. Like a blessing. Like a promise kept. Like the beginning of something beautiful. Spring came slowly to Montana that year. The snow began to melt in late March, revealing brown grass and frozen earth beneath. Icicles dripped from eaves. Rivers swelled with runoff. The world emerged from its white cocoon like something reborn. And Lily emerged too. It had been 2 months since the hearing. 2 months since Crane was dragged away in chains. 2 months since the investigation began uncovering horrors that would haunt Silver Falls for generations. 43 children had been rescued from the network. 43 broken souls pulled from factories and mines and worse places. Some had families who came forward to claim them. Others found new homes with people moved by their suffering. But many remained. The difficult ones, the damaged ones, the ones nobody wanted. Lily understood them better than anyone. "Papa," she said one morning at breakfast, her spoon pausing halfway to her mouth, "what happens to the children nobody picks?" Elijah looked up from his coffee. "What do you mean, sweetheart? The ones from the orphanage? The ones who are still waiting? Where do they go?" He set down his cup. "Some go to new orphanages, better ones. Some find families eventually, but some do not." No, he would not lie to her. Some do not. Lily was quiet for a long moment. Her oatmeal grew cold, her brow furrowed with thoughts too heavy for a 4-year-old to carry. "I was one of the ones nobody picked," she said finally. "Until you came?" "Yes, you were." She looked at him with those enormous brown eyes. "Maybe we could pick another one." The words hung in the air. Elijah opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Before he could respond, Ada appeared in the doorway with a letter in her hand. "This just arrived, from Dr. Mercer." Hannah's letter was brief and to the point. There was a boy, 7 years old, name of Noah. He had been in the system since he was 3. He had been returned by 2 families already. He was violent, she wrote, destructive, completely unable to trust. But beneath the warnings, Elijah read something else. A plea, a hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, the man who had reached Lily could reach this boy too. He has the same eyes Hannah had written at the end, the same emptiness, the same walls. "I thought you should know." Elijah read the letter 3 times. Then he looked at Lily. "Tell me more about wanting to pick another one." She climbed into his lap, a habit she had developed over the past months, a habit that still made his heart ache with gratitude every single time. "At the orphanage," she said slowly, "the worst part was being alone. Even when there were other children around, I was alone, because nobody understood. Nobody knew what it felt like to be so scared all the time." She traced the buttons on his shirt with her finger. "But you understood, Papa. You knew how to be patient. You knew how to wait until I was ready." She looked up at him. "Maybe there is another child who needs someone to understand. Maybe we could be that someone." "You know it would not be easy," Elijah said carefully. "This boy, he has been hurt very badly. He might be mean at first. He might not want to be part of our family." Lily nodded seriously. "I was mean at first too. I hid under beds and screamed at loud noises and would not let anyone touch me. You were never mean." "I bit Ada once." Elijah blinked. "You did." "She tried to brush my hair before I was ready. I bit her finger so hard it bled." "She never told you?" "No, she never told me." Lily smiled, a small secret smile. "Ada says some things are between ladies." She paused. "My point is that I was difficult, but you did not give up on me. So maybe we should not give up on this boy either." From the mouths of babes, Ada murmured from the doorway. Elijah looked at her, at Lily, at the letter in his hand. 2 months ago, he had been a ghost, a man going through the motions of living without actually being alive. Now he had a daughter who called him Papa, a purpose that extended beyond his own survival, a heart that had learned to feel again. Was there room for more? He looked at Lily. She looked back at him with complete confidence. "Your heart is big enough, Papa." "I know it is." They brought Noah to the ranch on a Tuesday in early April. He was small for 7, thin in a way that spoke of chronic hunger. His hair was black and tangled, his clothes worn but clean. He had gray eyes that reminded Elijah of storm clouds. But it was not the color that struck him. It was the hardness, like stone, like iron, like something that had been forged in fire until all the softness burned away. Noah did not speak when he arrived, did not acknowledge Elijah or Ada or anyone else. He simply stood in the middle of the front yard, his few possessions in a cloth bag at his feet, and stared at nothing. "This is your new home," the social worker said. "These nice people are going to take care of you now." Noah said nothing. The social worker sighed. "He has been like this for months. Will not talk to anyone. Will not engage. The last family said he set their barn on fire." Did he? They could not prove it. But the barn burned down 2 days after he arrived. Elijah crouched down to Noah's level. The boy did not flinch, did not react at all. "Hello, Noah. I am Elijah." "Nothing." "I am not going to pretend I know what you have been through. I am not going to promise you that everything will be perfect, but I am going to promise you this. No one in this house will hurt you. Ever." Noah's eyes flickered, just for a moment, just enough to show that somewhere beneath all that stone a real boy still existed. Then the hardness returned. The social worker left. Noah remained standing in the yard, unmoved, unreachable. And then Lily appeared. She walked out of the house slowly, buttons tucked under her arm. She did not approach Noah directly. Instead, she sat down on the porch steps about 10 feet away and began talking to her bear. "This is our new brother Buttons. His name is Noah. He looks really sad and really scared. I think maybe he does not believe that good things can happen to him." Noah's eyes moved, tracked toward her, just slightly. "I did not believe either when I first came here. I thought Papa was going to hurt me like everyone else did. I thought this was just another trick." She held Buttons up so the bear faced Noah. "But it was not a trick. Papa is real. The safety is real. The love is real." She set Buttons down and looked directly at Noah. "I know you do not trust us yet. That is okay. You do not have to trust us today, or tomorrow, or even next week. Papa waited for me until I was ready. He will wait for you too." She stood up, brushed off her dress. "But just so you know, there are cookies in the kitchen, and a warm bed, and people who will not hit you, no matter what you do." She walked back toward the house, then paused. "I hope you decide to stay. I always wanted a brother." She went inside. Noah stared at the door for a long time. Then slowly he picked up his bag and followed. The first weeks were brutal. Noah did not speak. He ate, alone, slept alone, spent hours staring out windows at nothing. When anyone approached, he either froze completely or lashed out with fists and feet and teeth. He broke 3 plates, tore the curtains in his room, punched Henry in the stomach when the foreman accidentally startled him, but he did not set anything on fire. And he watched Lily. Elijah noticed it first, the way Noah's eyes tracked her movements, the way he positioned himself where he could observe her interactions with Elijah and Ada, the way he seemed to be studying her, cataloging evidence, testing a hypothesis. "She is teaching him," Ada said one evening after the children were in bed. "Without even trying, she is showing him what a family can look like." He does not believe it yet. No. But he wants to. I can see it in his eyes. He wants to believe so badly it hurts. On the 4th week, something changed. Lily was in the barn with Snowdrop brushing the young horse's coat and chattering about everything and nothing. Noah appeared in the doorway, a silent shadow watching from the edges. Lily did not acknowledge him directly. She had learned not to. Any direct attention made him retreat. Instead, she kept talking to Snowdrop. "Papa says every creature deserves kindness, even the ones who bite, especially the ones who bite, because the ones who bite are usually the ones who have been bitten the most." She glanced at Noah, then away. "I used to bite. Did I ever tell you that, Snowdrop? I bit Ada once? Really hard. I was so scared and I did not know how to say it with words, so I said it with teeth." She moved around to Snowdrop's other side, closer to where Noah stood. But Ada did not get angry. She just wrapped up her finger and kept being nice to me. And eventually I stopped biting, because I did not need to anymore. She held out the brush toward the space between them, not toward Noah directly, just into the neutral territory between them. Snowdrop likes to be brushed. It makes her feel calm. Maybe you could try. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Noah reached out and took the brush. He did not brush Snowdrop. Not that day. He just held the brush, running his fingers over the bristles, testing its weight and texture. But he had taken something offered, had accepted a gift without expecting pain in return. It was a beginning. Summer arrived in a blaze of green and gold. The ranch thrived. Horses ran in pastures thick with grass. The garden overflowed with vegetables. Life returned to land that had seemed barren just months before. And life returned to Noah. It happened in pieces, small moments that accumulated like coins in a jar. The first time he sat at the table with the family instead of in the corner. The first time he let Ada cut his hair without flinching. The first time he laughed at something Charlie said, a startled bark of sound that surprised everyone, including himself. But the breakthrough came on a night in late July. Thunder rolled across the mountains. Lightning split the sky. Rain hammered against windows like fists demanding entry. Elijah woke to the sound of screaming. Not Lily. She had learned to weather storms in his arms, had learned that thunder was just noise, and lightning was just light. Noah. Elijah found him in the corner of his room, curled into a ball, hands over his head, screaming words that made no sense, or rather words that made horrible sense to anyone who understood what he had survived. Please stop. I will be good. I will be good. Please do not lock me in. Please, please, please. Elijah crouched down, but did not touch him. Noah, you are safe. You are in your room. There is no one here who will hurt you. But Noah could not hear. He was somewhere else. Some dark cellar, some locked closet, some place where storms meant punishment and thunder meant pain. Then Lily appeared. She walked past Elijah without hesitation, sat down right next to Noah, so close their shoulders almost touched. Noah, she said quietly, listen to my voice. Follow my voice back. He kept screaming. I know where you are right now. I used to go there too. It is dark and scary and you think you are going to die. But you are not there anymore. You are here, with me, with Papa, with people who will never hurt you. She reached out and took his hand. He flinched violently, started to pull away, but she held on. Feel my hand. Feel how warm it is. Feel how real it is. I am here. I am real. And I am not letting go. Slowly Noah's screaming subsided. His breathing steadied. His eyes focused on Lily's face. The storm, he whispered. Just noise. Lily squeezed his hand. It cannot hurt you. None of it can hurt you anymore. Noah looked at her, then at Elijah, still crouched nearby, then at the window where lightning flashed. I thought I was back, he said. In the cellar. I know. Lily's voice was gentle. The scared part of your brain does not know the difference between then and now. It thinks you are still in danger, so it makes you feel like you are. But you are not. You are safe. How do you know? Because Papa is here, and Papa would never let anything hurt us. Noah looked at Elijah for a long time. Really looked, maybe for the first time. Is that true? He asked. Would you really protect me? Elijah met his eyes. With my life. Something cracked in Noah's face. A wall crumbling. A door opening. He started to cry. Not the silent tears of someone who had learned to hide their pain. Real sobs. The kind that shook his whole body. The kind that had been locked away for so long they came out in a flood that could not be stopped. Elijah opened his arms, and Noah fell into them. They stayed that way until the storm passed. 3 damaged souls holding on to each other in the darkness, proving that even the most broken things could be made whole. Autumn painted the mountains in red and gold. The legal adoption was finalized in September. Both children. Official, permanent, forever. Judge Stone presided over the hearing himself. The same courtroom where Crane had fallen, the same bench, the same gavel. But everything else was different. Do you, Elijah Thornton, accept these children as your own? Stone asked, his voice formal, but his eyes warm. Do you promise to love them, protect them, and provide for them in all ways? Elijah looked at Lily standing tall in her blue dress. At Noah, still thin but no longer hollow-eyed. At the family they had become through choice and struggle and love. I do. And do you, Lily and Noah, accept Elijah Thornton as your father? Do you wish to take his name and become part of his family? Lily answered immediately. Yes, Noah hesitated, old fears dying hard. Then he looked at Lily, at Elijah, at Ada, wiping tears in the gallery. Yes, he said softly. I do, Stone smiled. Then by the authority vested in me by the territory of Montana, I declare you a family. From this day forward you are Lily Thornton and Noah Thornton, children of Elijah Thornton. The gavel fell. Forever, Lily said, grabbing both their hands. Noah looked at her, looked at Elijah. Forever, he repeated, and for the first time since he had arrived at the ranch, he smiled. That night they sat on the porch together, watching the stars emerge one by one. We are a real family now, Lily said. Official. We were a real family before, Elijah replied. The papers just make other people believe it. Noah was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I never thought I would have this. A family. A home. People who actually want me." "Neither did I," Lily said. "Neither did Papa. We were all alone until we found each other." She leaned her head against Elijah's arm. "Ada says that is what families are, not people who are born together. People who choose each other. People who stay even when it is hard." Elijah put one arm around each of his children. "Ada is right. Family is not about blood. It is about love. It is about showing up every day and proving that you mean what you say." He looked at the stars. "Your mother used to say that?" "Margaret. She said that love was not a feeling. It was a choice you made over and over again." "Tell us about her," Noah said quietly. "Please." So Elijah did. He told them about meeting Margaret at a church social, about their first dance, about the way she laughed and the way she saw the good in everyone and the way she made him want to be a better man. He told them about losing her, about the 4 years of darkness that followed, about building walls so high he thought nothing would ever get through. And then he told them about the day he walked into town to buy a horse and came home with a daughter instead. "She sent you to me," Lily said confidently. "I know she did. Maybe she did." Elijah smiled. "Maybe she looked down from heaven and saw a lonely man and a little girl who both needed saving. Maybe she pushed us together." And Noah, Lily asked, "Maybe she sent him too. Maybe she knew our family was not complete yet." Noah did not say anything, but he moved closer, let Elijah's arm tighten around his shoulders, let himself be held. And in that moment, under the vast Montana sky, 3 broken people became something more. A family forged not by blood but by choice, not by fate but by courage, not by circumstance but by love. And that was worth everything. 25 years passed like water through open hands. The world changed in ways that Elijah Thornton could never have imagined on that frozen December day when he walked into a town square and found a barefoot girl standing in the snow. Automobiles replaced horses on city streets. Electric lights pushed back the darkness. Telephones carried voices across impossible distances. But some things remained constant. The mountains still rose against the Montana sky. The winters still buried the valley in white silence. And the Thornton Ranch still stood larger, now prosperous, a testament to decades of hard work and harder love. Elijah was 57 years old. His hair had gone silver at the temples, then spread like frost across his whole head. His hands, once quick and strong, now ached in cold weather. His eyes needed spectacles for reading, and his knees complained when storms approached. But his heart was fuller than he had ever dreamed possible. It was Christmas Eve, 1913. Snow fell softly outside the windows, blanketing the world in white. Inside the ranch house, every room blazed with light and life. Candles flickered on the mantels. A massive tree stood in the parlor, decorated with ornaments that spanned 3 generations. The smell of Ada's cooking filled the air, though Ada herself now supervised from a chair by the fire, her 83-year-old bones too tired for the work she had done for so many decades. But she still gave orders. More cinnamon in those cookies, she called to the kitchen. "And someone check the goose. If it burns, I will haunt this house forever." Laughter echoed through the rooms. The house was full of people, fuller than it had ever been in Elijah's lifetime, fuller than he had dared to hope during those dark years when he thought he would die alone. Lily stood at the kitchen counter rolling pie dough with the same careful attention she gave to everything. She was 28 years old now, tall and strong, with the same brown eyes that had captured Elijah's heart a quarter-century ago. But those eyes no longer held emptiness. They shone with intelligence, determination, and joy. She had become a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. The first female attorney in Montana to argue before the Territorial Supreme Court. She had dedicated her life to protecting children, to fighting the systems that had once tried to destroy her. She had closed 23 abusive institutions across the territory, had helped place over 200 children with loving families, had changed laws that had allowed monsters like Crane to operate in darkness. She was magnificent, and she was not alone. Charlie Cooper stood beside her, stealing bits of pie dough when he thought she was not looking. He was 35 now, no longer the awkward boy who had first shown Lily how to build with wooden blocks. He had grown into a kind, steady man who had loved Lily since he was 12 years old and had waited patiently until she was ready to love him back. They had married 3 years ago in the same church where Crane had once preached his false gospel. "Mama," a small voice called from the parlor. "Mama, come see what I made." Lily wiped her hands on her apron and went to her daughter. Margaret was 5 years old, named for the woman Elijah had loved and lost so long ago. She had her mother's brown eyes and her father's easy smile. She held up a paper snowflake, cut with the careful precision of a child who wanted everything to be perfect. "It is beautiful, sweetheart," Lily said, kneeling down. "Can we show Grandpa?" "Of course we can." "Grandpa," the word still made Elijah's chest ache with gratitude. Margaret ran across the room and climbed into his lap without hesitation, without fear, without any of the wariness that had defined her mother's early years. She had never known hunger, never known violence, never known the cold emptiness of being unwanted. That was Lily's gift to her. That was the legacy of breaking the cycle. "Look what I made, Grandpa. It is a snowflake. Every snowflake is different." "Did you know that I did know that?" Elijah said, examining the paper creation with appropriate seriousness. "This might be the finest snowflake I have ever seen." Margaret beamed. "Mama says snowflakes are like people, all different, all special, all beautiful in their own way. Your mama is very wise." "I know." Margaret nodded solemnly. "She is the smartest person in the whole world, except maybe you." Elijah laughed, a real laugh, deep and warm, the kind that had been impossible for him 25 years ago. "I think your mama might be smarter than me, little one." From across the room, Noah watched the exchange with a gentle smile. He was 32 now, broad-shouldered and strong, with the same gray eyes that had once been hard as stone. But the hardness was long gone, replaced by warmth and wisdom and peace. He had become an architect, not just any architect. He designed schools and orphanages, buildings full of light, and open spaces, buildings that were the opposite of the dark cellars and locked rooms of his childhood. He believed that spaces shaped souls, that children raised in beauty would learn to create beauty themselves. His buildings stood across Montana and beyond. Schools in Helena, an orphanage in Billings that had become a model for the entire territory, and a children's hospital in Denver that bore his name. And he had a family of his own. Sarah, his wife, sat beside him on the sofa, their son, Elijah Jr., asleep in her arms. The boy was 3 years old, named for the man who had given Noah a second chance at life. He had his father's dark hair and his mother's kind heart. The first grandchild had been born 2 years ago, Margaret Lily's daughter, then Elijah Jr., and Sarah was expecting again due in the spring. The family kept growing, kept expanding, kept proving that love multiplied rather than divided. Ada had been right all those years ago. Love does not run out, it just grows bigger. The evening deepened. Dinner was served and devoured, a feast that Ada had orchestrated from her chair like a general commanding troops. Stories were told, laughter rang out. Children ran between legs while adults pretended to scold them and secretly smiled. After the children were put to bed, the adults gathered in the parlor. Elijah sat in his favorite chair by the fire, Lily on one side, Noah on the other, the next generation sleeping peacefully upstairs. "Do you remember your first Christmas here?" Lily asked, her voice soft with memory. Elijah nodded. "You were so thin, so scared. You would not eat unless you could see the door." "I was waiting for someone to take the food away," Lily said. "That is what always happened before." Noah was quiet for a moment. "I remember my first Christmas here, too. I did not believe it was real. I kept waiting for the trick, for the punishment, for the moment when everything good would be snatched away. But it never came." Elijah said, "No." Noah looked at him with eyes that held no trace of the broken boy he had once been. "It never came. You just kept being kind day after day until I finally believed it." Lily reached over and took Elijah's hand. "You saved us, Papa." "No." Elijah shook his head. "You saved me, both of you. I was dead inside when I found you, Lily. I was going through the motions of living, but there was nothing left. No hope, no purpose, no reason to wake up in the morning." He squeezed her hand. "You gave me a reason. You gave me a purpose. You cracked through walls I had spent 4 years building, and you let the light back in." "We saved each other," Noah said quietly. "That is what family does." Silence fell. Comfortable, warm, the silence of people who had nothing left to prove to each other. Then Lily said, "I have something for you, Papa." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. "I found this in the courthouse archives, in the records from the hearing. I did not even know it existed until last month." Elijah unwrapped the package carefully. Inside was a photograph. It showed him standing in the courtroom, Lily in his arms, both of them facing the camera with identical expressions of determination and hope. It had been taken on the day the custody was finalized, the day Crane was led away in chains, the day their family had officially begun. Elijah stared at the image for a long time. He remembered that day. Remembered the fear and the hope and the overwhelming sense that everything was about to change. Remembered holding Lily against his chest and promising her that he would never let her go. He had kept that promise. For 25 years, through good times and bad, through triumph and tragedy, through all the ordinary days that made up a life, he had kept that promise. "I never knew anyone took a picture," he said, finally, his voice rough. "Neither did I." Lily leaned her head against his shoulder. "But I am glad they did. It reminds me of who we were, of how far we have come." Noah leaned forward to look at the photograph. "You both look terrified," he observed. "We were," Elijah admitted. "I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew I could not let them take her back." "You figured it out?" Noah smiled. "You figured out how to be a father, the best father anyone could ask for." "I had good teachers." Elijah looked at both of them. "You taught me patience. You taught me that healing takes time. You taught me that love is not about being perfect. It is about showing up day after day and proving that you mean what you say." Lily wiped her eyes. "I used to wonder why you chose me," she said. "Out of all those children on that platform, why did you pick me?" "You know why. Tell me again." Elijah set the photograph aside and took both her hands in his. "Because you were not crying," he said. "Every other child on that platform was crying or begging or trying to look appealing, but you just stood there, barefoot in the snow, holding that raggedy bear, staring at nothing with eyes that had seen too much." He paused. "You had given up hope. I could see it. You had accepted that no one would want you, that you would go back to that terrible place, that your life would be nothing but pain until it finally ended." His voice cracked. "And I could not bear it. I could not walk away and leave you to that fate. Because I recognized what I saw in your eyes. I had seen it in my own mirror for 4 years. Lily was crying now. Not sad tears. Grateful tears. "You saw yourself in me. I saw someone who needed saving. And in saving you, I saved myself." Noah reached out and put his hand over both of theirs. "You saved me too," he said, "even when I did not want to be saved. Even when I fought you every step of the way. You never gave up." "I never will," Elijah said. "No matter how old I get, no matter what happens, I will never give up on either of you." The fire crackled. The snow fell. The house creaked softly in the wind. And 3 people who had once been utterly alone sat together in the warmth, bound by something stronger than blood. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Elijah sat alone on the porch. The snow had stopped. The clouds had parted. 1,000,000 stars blazed across the Montana sky. The same stars that had watched over this land for millennia before humans arrived, the same stars that would continue long after everyone he loved had turned to dust. He thought about Margaret, about the life they had planned together, the children they had dreamed of, the future that had been stolen by fate or God or simple bad luck. He thought about the music box that still sat on his bedside table. He had wound it again finally on the first anniversary of Lily's arrival, had sat in his room and listened to the melody and cried for everything he had lost and everything he had found. He thought about all the children who had passed through his life in the years since, not just Lily and Noah, but the dozens of others who had come to the ranch for a day or a week or a month, former orphans who needed a place to heal, runaways who needed a safe harbor, lost souls who needed someone to believe in them. He had not saved them all. Some had been too broken. Some had not wanted to be saved. Some had slipped through his fingers despite everything he tried. But he had saved enough to fill his house with laughter, enough to fill his heart with purpose, enough to transform a life that had seemed empty and meaningless into something extraordinary. The door opened behind him. Lily stepped out onto the porch wrapped in a heavy shawl. "Cannot sleep?" she asked, sitting down beside him. "Too many thoughts. Good thoughts or bad thoughts? Good ones, mostly." He looked at her. "I was thinking about how different my life would be if I had not walked into that square 25 years ago. You would have bought a horse." Elijah laughed. "Yes, I would have bought a horse, and I would have gone home to my empty house and my empty life, and eventually I would have died alone, having accomplished nothing that mattered. But you did not. No, I did not." Lily leaned her head against his shoulder. "I was thinking about it too," she said, "about what would have happened if you had not come. I would have gone back to Helena, to the workhouse. I probably would have died before I turned 10. Elijah put his arm around her. "You would have survived," he said. "You are the strongest person I have ever known. Maybe. But I would not have lived. Not really." She looked up at the stars. "You taught me what living means, Papa. You taught me that I was worth something, that I deserved love, that the world could be good even after everything bad that had happened." She turned to face him. "I try to teach that to every child I help. Every case I take, every courtroom I walk into, I carry you with me. I ask myself, what would Papa do? And then I do that. Elijah's eyes stung. I am so proud of you, he said. More proud than I could ever put into words. I know, she smiled. I learned that from you, too. How to be proud of someone, how to show it even when the words are hard. They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars wheel slowly overhead. Then Lily said, I have something else to tell you. I was going to wait until morning, but I cannot keep it in any longer. What is it? She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. Margaret is going to be a big sister. Elijah stared at her. You are pregnant? Yes. Sarah and I figured it out together, actually. We are both due in the spring, about 2 weeks apart. 2 more grandchildren. Elijah felt tears sliding down his cheeks. He did not bother to wipe them away. 2 grandchildren already, he said, and 4 more on the way. 5 more, actually. Lily grinned. I am having twins. Twins. The doctor confirmed it yesterday. I wanted to tell you on Christmas. Elijah pulled her into a hug. He held his daughter, his first child, the little girl who had cracked through his walls and taught him how to live again. He thought about the family that had grown from that single choice on a frozen December day. 2 children had become 4 grandchildren, soon to be 7. The Thornton name would continue. The legacy of love would spread. This is the best Christmas gift anyone has ever given me, he said. Better than the photograph, even better than the photograph. They laughed together, cried together, held each other as the night deepened and the stars continued their ancient dance. Elijah Thornton passed away peacefully in his sleep on a spring morning 2 years later. He was 59 years old. He had seen both sets of twins born, had held each of his grandchildren in his arms, had watched his legacy grow and flourish and spread across the territory. His last words were to Lily, who sat beside his bed holding his hand. You were worth it, he whispered. Every fight, every fear, every moment. You were worth all of it. I know, Papa. Lily smiled through her tears. You taught me that. Then he closed his eyes, and Elijah Thornton, who had once been a ghost walking among the living, went to join Margaret in whatever came next, leaving behind a family that would carry his love forward through generations yet to come. The funeral drew people from across the territory, former orphans he had helped rescue, families he had supported, children whose lives had been changed by the ripple effects of his single act of courage 27 years before. Lily spoke last. She stood at the podium looking out at the crowd that had gathered to honor her father. My father was not a complicated man, she said. He believed in hard work and keeping your word and protecting those who could not protect themselves. But the thing that made him extraordinary was not any of that. She paused, gathering herself. The thing that made him extraordinary was his capacity to love, to see a broken child and believe she could be whole, to take a chance on hearts that had been shattered and trust that they could heal. She looked at Noah standing with his family, at Charlie holding their children, at Ada gray-haired and weeping in the front row. He taught me that family is not about blood, it is about choice. It is about showing up day after day and proving through action what words can never fully express. Her voice steadied. My father saved my life when I was 3 years old, but more than that, he gave me a life worth living. He gave me love worth believing in. He gave me a future I never dreamed was possible. She placed her hand on his casket. And I will spend the rest of my days making sure that legacy continues, that every child who feels unwanted knows there is someone fighting for them, that every broken heart learns it can beat again. She lifted her chin. That is what you taught me, Papa. That is what I will teach them. The Thornton Ranch stands to this day. Lily's great-grandchildren run through its fields, play in its barns, ride horses descended from Snowdrop. They know the story of the barefoot girl and the broken man who found each other on a frozen December day. They know that their family was built not on blood, but on love. And in the main house above the fireplace hangs the photograph. A man and a little girl standing in a courtroom facing the camera with identical expressions of determination and hope. Below the photograph on a small brass plaque are the words Lily chose to honor her father's memory. Family is not born. Family is built. And love once given never dies. That is the legacy of Elijah Thornton, not the ranch or the horses or the wealth he accumulated, not the laws he helped change or the institutions he helped close, but the simple, profound truth he discovered on a winter day when he'd looked at a child nobody wanted and decided she was worth everything. Some things are worth fighting for. Some people are worth believing in. Some love is worth every sacrifice it demands. He found a daughter when he went looking for a horse. He found a son when he thought his heart was full. He found a family when he believed himself incapable of love. And in finding them, he found himself. That is the power of choice. That is the miracle of belonging. That is what it means to love completely and without reservation, forever, and a day. The end.